perhaps sensing something was off about our vibe. Nearly 30 of our classmates had gathered around us by the time I noticed.
By the way, I haven't told you yet about the company I work for. It's a major corporation, so you probably know it, White,"
said Smith, my classmate, making a big deal before dramatically revealing the name of his company to White, who was with me. There were about 30 classmates listening to the conversation, so maybe Smith was feeling bold. He raised his voice even more and went on about himself, then suddenly turned to me and called me out by name.
"Williams, surprised by my company's name. If you're jealous, why don't you try changing jobs and work at a somewhat decent company?"
Smith shouted, drawing even more people around us. Watching this scene, I felt a sense of nostalgia. It reminded me of middle school when, if there was a hint that Smith was bothering White, everyone would gather to protect White from him. And then, they spoke up to Smith. "My name is John Williams. I'm a single man in my 40s. I was not good at studying since middle school. But I preferred creating things on my own rather than being told what to do by someone. It wouldn't be strange if people thought I was selfish. But I was fortunate with my classmates back then, so I wasn't treated as a troublemaker. Rather, I was often appointed as a representative, like being the captain of a club or relied upon as a class representative. So it seemed natural for others to expect me to act as a leader. Even though I said I hated being told what to do, I also didn't like giving orders to others. So, it was probably good for everyone that we talked things through and moved forward in a way that we all agreed on. I don't particularly regret anything in my life, and I had a fun time in high school and college too. Still, if asked when was the most fulfilling time, I'd say it was during middle school. Today is the middle school reunion with those old friends. It's been 20 years since we last met at our coming-of-age ceremony. I headed to the hotel, which was the venue, feeling excited.
"Hey, long time no see. Everyone looks the same."
I thought I had arrived a bit early, but it seems that the other attendees had already gathered. They must have been looking forward to today just like I was. While catching up with some classmates nearby, a cheerful voice came from behind.
"Looks like you guys are having fun, talking about work."
Turning around, there was a familiar face in a bright, flashy suit with a fancy-looking scarf, Mike Smith. Flashy suit with a fancy-looking scarf, Mike Smith. The smartphone he was holding had a somewhat childish strap hanging from it. At first glance, I didn't recognize who it was, but seeing the distinctive mole near his eyes, I immediately realized it was Smith. Until a moment ago, we were all chatting merrily, but some had sour faces and went somewhere else.
"Isn't that Smith? I didn't recognize you. You're really dressed up in that fancy suit."
"You guys haven't changed a bit. Why don't you put a little more effort into how you dress?"
Smith looked us over from head to toe and scoffed.
"Well, the clothes someone wears do reflect who they are."
"You probably don't have a great job or make much money. Eating at a place like this hotel must be a painful expense for you." Unaware of the discomfort around him, Smith continued with his snide remarks. I could only manage a forced smile, but Smith shifted the conversation to work.
"Speaking of work, what do you guys do?"
he asked, not really waiting for anyone's reply and pointing at each one of us.
"You're quite tanned."
"You must be doing something physical. Probably construction. And you were not the brightest. So you must be in farming. Also, you kind of smell. You should take care of that body odor." His comments felt like a personal attack and a judgment of our careers, and I couldn't help but respond irritably.
"Hey, that's quite rude."
There is no hierarchy of dignity in jobs. Society functions because we all work. You might want to watch your words," I retorted, unable to hide my irritation. I regretted the harshness of my words since we were all gathered for a good time, but Smith seemed unfazed,
What's the matter?
Got upset. Are you doing some kind of physical labor too? Williams, well, you always like to stand out in front of everyone, but you weren't exactly the sharpest. He laughed heartily and then cheerfully moved towards a group of women. People like him never change, do they? Muttered those around me. Smith always had a knack for disrupting the group and trying to stand out without reading the room. It seems some things don't change even as we grow up. I decided to shift my focus and began reminiscing with my classmates. As the reunion officially started, the atmosphere livened up significantly with the help of some drinks. During middle school, it was tough to communicate openly with girls due to adolescence, but now it feels genuinely nice to interact as adults, sharing unnoticed feelings and impressions from back then. And confessing, I really wanted to be closer to you at the time, made for a wonderfully indescribable time. Williams, I heard someone call my name, and when I turned around, it was Nancy White.
White, it's been so long.
I blurted out, a bit louder than intended because, in fact, White was my first crush. It wasn't just me who found White attractive, she was the center of attention among the boys back then. Meeting her again after so long, she seemed even younger than her 40s and her mature demeanor only added to her charm.
You haven't changed a bit since then, Williams.
Does that mean I haven't grown since middle school?
As we exchanged these light-hearted comments, I was acutely aware of my racing heart. My eyes were drawn to her elegant hands, noticing that White was not wearing a ring. Could it be that White is still single? I wasn't thinking about starting a relationship now, but knowing she was married would have been a tight squeeze on my heart. It shouldn't matter to me now, but I felt relieved to see no ring, only to immediately scold myself for that thought. Not wearing a ring doesn't necessarily mean she's unmarried. With her appeal, White must surely have a wonderful husband and a lovely home. I felt a strong urge to ask about her marital status, but it seemed somewhat inappropriate to delve into such personal matters so abruptly. Yet, contrary to my thoughts, White was the first to ask, "Aren't you married?" I mistakenly thought she was curious if I had a spouse, especially since, like White, I also wore no wedding ring on my ring finger. I had to quickly correct that frivolous thought. White's expression was nothing more than polite small talk, seemingly without any deeper meaning. Feeling a bit reckless, I replied to White,
I'm not married. You might remember. Even in middle school I never had a girlfriend. Really, no one had any taste.
I tried to make it sound like a joke, smiling brightly at White. Though I shouldn't say it myself, I wasn't unpopular with the girls. Indeed, I never had a girlfriend, but I was confessed to by several girls. The reason I never dated anyone was that I was genuinely in love with White. Even seeing my classmates happy with their partners, I couldn't bring myself to date someone I didn't truly like.
Sure, Williams, you were popular back then, but it was like how fast kids in elementary school are popular, she joked.
It's a bit disheartening to be compared to a grade schooler. Indeed, as a kid, romance seemed to be decided by who liked whose face or who could run the fastest, or where you stood in the group. But now, feeling like White had dismissed me, it was somewhat painful. Perhaps my feelings showed on my face. White quickly backtracked.
Oh, don't take it seriously. You're still as serious as ever.
I wasn't sure how much she meant it, but hearing her say that reassured me. As we enjoyed our meal and continued talking, Smith suddenly interrupted.
White, there you are. Hanging out with Williams must be boring. Come talk with me.
Here comes the troublemaker. Smith, seeing me, gestured with his chin as if telling me to go away. I enjoyed my time with White, but we had talked enough. And perhaps she would have more fun talking to someone else, even someone like Smith, who she hadn't caught up with yet. Glancing at White, She looked troubled.
Williams, just go already. You must be starving, right? Go fill up your stomach now so you won't be hungry later.
Smith said as he pushed me aside to sit next to White. White, looking slightly annoyed, still listened to Smith.
I recently got promoted to a management position.
It's true, competent men keep moving up. I'm basically on a different level from everyone else here when it comes to work, Smith boasted, while White just nodded along. Watching this painfully immature interaction, I wondered when I should throw in a lifeline. Sensing something off about the atmosphere, more classmates gathered around.
By the way,
I haven't mentioned where I work. Right, it's a major company, so surely White knows it, Smith started pretentiously before dramatically announcing his company's name. At the mention of the name, White suddenly looked at me, aware that I was nearby. Maybe Smith knew I was still around. About 30 classmates were listening. Maybe that made him feel more confident. Raising his voice even further, Smith began to boast about himself. He went on about how high his salary is, how valuable he is for working at a well-known company, and how trivial other classmates are in comparison, completely disregarding the souring mood. Then he turned to me, suddenly calling me out by name.
Williams, were you surprised by my company's name? If you're jealous,
Why don't you try job hunting and work at a somewhat decent company? Smith yelled, drawing more people around us. Watching this scene, I felt a sense of nostalgia. It reminded me of middle school when, if there was a hint that Smith was bothering White, everyone would gather to protect White from him. And then, they spoke up to Smith.
There he goes again, feeling good about himself by putting others down.
I got hassled by him earlier about work and salary too.
Why is he picking a fight with Williams anyway?
It seemed that everyone's complaints reached Smith's ears. Apparently dissatisfied, he approached me with an intimidating demeanor.
your value is determined by the company you work for and how much you earn.
Just because you acted all high and mighty in middle school doesn't mean it will last forever, he said. Hearing Smith's words made me feel embarrassed for him. It's clear that Smith needs to change his attitude.
So which branch are you at? I'm starting to worry whether you can actually do your job, I retorted.
What are you trying to say? Smith looked confused.
In contrast to his perplexed expression, our classmates around us chuckled. Though I wasn't boasting. Since we had been updating each other about our jobs and family situations, everyone else seemed to grasp the intention behind my remark. Smith looked so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh.
What's the sudden fuss about? It doesn't matter which branch.
Working at the headquarters doesn't make you superior. What matters is which company you join. He suddenly exclaimed, seeming amused. Wait, Williams, are you worrying about whether it's the headquarters or not? After all that talk about how all jobs are equal, really, you are such a small man. Smith blurted out, causing a burst of laughter from everyone around. He seemed to finally realize something was off, but didn't fully grasp the situation, so I decided to explain.
I don't think being at the headquarters makes you any more important.
It's because of the people at the branches working hard that the entire group's sales go up, I countered. But I confronted Smith with the reality.
I need to let the branch people know that someone with your kind of values is at the company.
Just one person can damage the company's image or cause losses with the wrong actions. I spoke clearly, but it seemed Smith didn't quite catch on. He turned red and snapped at me.
Mock me all you want, a nobody like you complaining won't make anyone in our company bat an eye.
Smith retorted defiantly, while our classmates encouraged the exchange, boosting the reunion's energy.
You should tell him straight because he's going to feel really pathetic later.
White whispered to me in a low voice. Unexpectedly, Smith had become the life of the party, But as White suggested, and it was a bit sad, I decided to lay it out plainly for him.
Look, the company you work for. I founded that company.
What? What kind of fantasy are you talking about? There's no way you could start a company that makes commercials.
Explaining further seemed pointless. I was about to give up on explaining, but then White took out her smartphone and showed the screen to Smith.
Look, it's right here.
Smith, if you are so proud of your company, shouldn't you at least remember the names and faces of the board members? Thanks to White showing proof, Smith finally seemed to accept what I was saying. With a pale face, Smith spoke in a feeble voice.
I didn't know that. I may have spoken out of turn. Please forgive me, as an old classmate.
The sudden change in his demeanor drew sneers from around us. It seemed that the classmates were satisfied, and the onlookers gradually dispersed.
Did you change your attitude because I started the company?
It's not about forgiving or not forgiving. It's about how dangerous your attitude is, I said.
Yeah, I get it. I'm reflecting on it, Smith replied, still not seeming to understand.
With a sigh, I said bluntly,
I'll make sure to talk to your boss.
as long as you're doing your job well, it's fine to continue as is. But watch how you express yourself. What you think will definitely show in your actions and words. I understand, Smith said, suddenly using formal language and straightening his back. White chuckled softly at this. It was unfortunate that Smith had disrupted the pleasant conversation I was having with White. I was ready to leave the conversation there, but White suggested, let's continue this somewhere else. Watching this, Smith frowned.
Are you trying to charm your classmates because you started a startup?
What's going on all of a sudden? Williams asked.
Smith, who had been quiet until now, seemed to be stirred by some other emotion. Despite thinking him a busybody, I listened to what he had to say. White, just because someone started a company doesn't mean you should get close to them. Judge them by who they are as a person.
What are you talking about? I've been looking forward to seeing everyone, including Williams, since before I knew any of that.
It's not about Smith. White responded assertively, causing Smith to only grunt in reply. He suddenly changed the topic and held up his smartphone.
I've always cherished this. It's the strap White gave me, remember?
For someone who flaunted brand-name goods like Smith, it seemed oddly childish. However, it turned out that this was something White had given him back in middle school. Smith looked expectantly at White for her reaction, but with a sudden "oh," she revealed a shocking fact.
I remember, I bought that during a trip back in middle school.
Yes, exactly. I was so happy I kept it on all the time. I never confessed. But if White's feelings haven't changed since then.
White interjected, that was actually. Immediately after, Smith's face visibly darkened. It turns out, the souvenir was meant to be a gift for me. White intended to secretly give it to me, but mistakenly put it in Smith's desk instead of mine. The keychain came with a letter that was left unaddressed, with a simple note saying it was bought on a trip, which led Smith to believe it was intended for him. White wanted to correct this, but seeing Smith happily boasting about it alone made her feel embarrassed. Hearing White's explanation, Smith was utterly disheartened and stared at the keychain. Feeling pity for him, I was about to say something when Smith blurted out something unbelievable.
But you don't hate me, right? If White is okay with it, I won't mind dating you.
Smith said, suggesting he too was single like me. But surely, White must already have a wonderful partner. Smith's remark puzzled me, and as expected, White vehemently shook her head in response.
That's impossible. How can I be happy with someone who looks down on others at work and lacks compassion?
I couldn't help but laugh at her direct response, though Smith seemed not quite ready to give up.
What are you talking about? I make good money, and I wouldn't let you struggle if we were together.
Besides, there's no harm in trying. We can worry about the details later. He persisted, seemingly overestimating himself. White firmly shattered his self-esteem.
Absolutely not.
I don't need to try to know how uninteresting you are, Smith. Plus, I heard that all those brand things you wear and even your car are all bought on credit, right?
So what if it's on credit? It's my money I've earned, so there's no issue.
Besides, being able to take out loans is a sign of having social credit, he retorted. White just smirked at his shallow comments.
I can't be with someone who makes lavish purchases on installment plans and lives paycheck to paycheck in their old age.
We have two different views on the value of money. Find someone who shares your values, or stay single, she advised. Even Smith, at this point, seemed deflated by White's words. I tried to cheer him up.
Smith, why not try talking to someone who's looking for a partner?
Not someone who's already built a happy home like White. You'll surely find someone nice. I meant well, but Smith teared up and snapped back.
What are you saying? White is single. That's no encouragement. Just go away.
Looking surprised at White, I saw she had an unfazed expression. Her lack of denial seemed to confirm she was also single like me.
I've been so focused on work that before I knew it, I missed my chance to marry.
I used to think by this age I'd be married with kids, but things don't always go as planned, she shared.
Same here. I never thought I'd end up going home to an empty house after work, I replied.
As we shared self-deprecating remarks about ourselves, White and I couldn't help but laugh. We continued to have a great time talking, but eventually, I noticed that Smith had disappeared. Later, I reached out to the branch where Smith worked to check on his work situation. As expected, he was obsequious to those above him but condescending to younger or lower-ranking colleagues, worsening the workplace environment. His promotion seemed to only amplify these tendencies, as the hardships faced by his co-workers became apparent. I immediately advocated for a performance and workplace satisfaction survey. Depending on the results, a personnel re-evaluation at Smith's branch might be necessary. While uncertain of the outcome, I hoped for no sad news as I awaited the survey results. Ultimately, Smith's reputation within the company was abysmal, and his actions were found to be in violation of compliance. Moreover, customer complaints had surged regarding interactions with him, not just within the company. Smith was quickly demoted, stripped of his salary perks, and removed from any customer-facing roles. A few months later, I learned he had resigned, hopefully doing better at another company. If he has taken the opportunity to reflect and renew his commitment to his work, that would be ideal, though no one seems to be around to witness it. Following our reunion, White and I began to meet regularly, and we're now excitedly planning a trip for the upcoming long weekend. As we finished our meal and were about to part ways, White shared her feelings with me.
When we were in middle school,
there was that souvenir that mistakenly went to Smith, right? I've been thinking I'd like to visit that place again, she said. When I asked why, she explained that she felt so sorry for her younger self, and thought it would be redeeming if we could go back and pick out a souvenir together now. Hearing this, I was genuinely pleased.
That sounds great.
If my middle school self knew I could have such an experience in the future, he would have been overjoyed, I replied, laughing. Then, with a serious look, White asked, "Aren't you happy about it now?" Feeling a warmth spread through me, I responded honestly, "Of course, I am." Hearing that, White smiled and said, "I'm glad," before heading home. I watched her leave, gently placing my hand over my racing heart.